A couple of quick points here. One, the administration is actively considering resuming food aid into North Korea, and I understand the humanitarian impulse here. But the unusual circumstances of North Korea make this a mistake, and make it a very bad mistake, frankly, which this amendment would correct. I remember the words of one North Korean defector, Kim Dong-hong. I had a chance to talk with him, and he said, he said actually in testimony here before the committee, we must not give food aid to North Korea because, he says, it is, in his words, the same as providing funding for North Korea's nuclear program. Why is that so? Because what invariably happens is they redirect these resources into support for the regime. This week, we had reports that North Korea is making miniaturized versions of its nuclear weapons, ones that could fit atop ICBMs, and that makes his statement all that more dire about the redirection of these resources into the regime's hands. The situation in North Korea, listen, it's heartbreaking. I've been up there. I've seen the deprivation. But this is a disaster made by the dictatorship itself. And let me say unequivocally, the food we send does not reach the hungry. So who benefits from our goodwill? Well, the inner circle does, and their military-industrial complex does. We've had hearings in which the French NGO Doctors Without Borders, we're all aware of their good work around the world. They testified before the International Relations Committee that the vast majority of refugees they interview say they had never received any food aid. None of the children they had ever met had ever seen food aid during the years they worked up on the border. And this testimony is backed up by a survey, 500 North Korean defectors. 78.2% of them never saw foreign food aid. And the reason for this is because it goes again into the black market. It is sold for the hard currency that the regime needs for its nuclear program and other programs. Now, some could argue, you know, what we need is more oversight, maybe better monitoring on this food. Let me tell you about the testimony we've heard on that. Because the North Koreans, I don't think they've got a word for transparency. No matter how airtight any monitoring protocol may be, they cheat. We had a Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission hearing where a North Korean dissident told us how the regime would mark all the houses that had received bags of food and would return to collect them after the monitors had left. So North Korea is always going to cheat. Some assert that the North is holding food, you know, for the future, hoarding 1 million tons of rice. That's the charge we hear from South Korea, from members of their parliament. But the fact is that it's an asset that is converted by the North. So I urge my colleagues to support my amendment for the sake of the North Korean people. Providing this aid not only allows Kim Jong-il's oppressive regime to divert scarce resources towards its military program, one that has grown increasingly threatening, but it also delays the day when real structural reform will come to North Korea. There is a North Korean saying that pouring water into a cracked pot is worthless. Well, sending resources to Kim Jong-il is even worse. It's enabling a regime with one of the world's worst human rights records, but also with an atomic bomb. North Korea has played us like a fiddle for years. Conditions for North Koreans have only worsened. It's time for a new North Korean policy. So let's start now, and I ask my colleagues to support this amendment.